Our guest today is Shekhar Rege. He's responsible for IT delivery for the consumer integration products and services. Welcome, Shekhar. It's great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Bronwyn. And thanks for inviting me on this podcast. It's nice to connect with so many people on the favorite topic of mine, which is Agile. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, great. So as you mentioned today, our topic is Agile. I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights on your Agile journey, as well as some of your personal stories and hopefully some top tips to help Agile become more effective. So could you start by sharing your experience with Agile ways of working?
Yeah, so I have been working in Agile format for last 5+ years now, and it has been always, especially in the consumer space. Obviously, Agile is a pretty fancy word since a while, and a lot of people associate it with certain ways of working, certain position names, certain roles. But I think I have learned a lot in last 5 years, and beyond the terminology, beyond the ceremonies, beyond the certain structure, there is much more to Agile, is what I would say. And my personal experience has been pretty good because it offers a lot of learning besides just the process aspects. And most importantly, it helps one to change his or her mindset in terms of how you view business and IT collaboration and integration. So that's my take on Agile for last 5 years, whatever I have learned by personally experiencing and implementing it in my teams.
Okay, thank you. So can you share what Agile means to you?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, Agile is associated with lots of terminologies and specific ways of working and process aspects for larger set of people. For me, based on what I learned, I actually think Agile is all about a mindset. I think the ceremony structure, role names are secondary. You can be agile without implementing agile processes. At the same time, agile processes are necessary to ensure that everyone understands the basic principles behind that and also work in a certain way, in a certain tandem with a certain cadence. But for me, agile would be more of mindset. It's more about empathy in terms of how you view business requirements as an IT person. It talks about how you should be quick enough to react on the changes in real life. It talks about a mindset where you need to work along with different other people with different roles, and at the same time have a collaborative mindset to do things faster and quicker and be innovative. That's actually agile for me, and not just what popularly known as scrums or sprints or whatsoever. So in summary, agile is about the right mindset to be agile and not the process part of it.
And it's interesting to hear you say about empathy for other teams.
Yeah. That's one of the greatest strengths of agile, is what I would say, if implemented correctly.
Okay. So everybody knows that well-known benefits of agile, but can you share in your experience what some of the key benefits of agile are?
Yeah. Okay. I think popularly people associate benefit of agile of faster go to market for sure. That's probably the lowest hanging fruit, but there are very good subtle benefits which are long term and which probably are not necessarily quantitative. For example, agile offers a great team spirit because you will have to work along with different types of people towards a common goal in a certain fashion. And most importantly, as I said earlier, it gives you a big benefit in terms of your team empathizing about customer needs. In traditional projects, especially in waterfall, people somehow love to compare waterfall with agile, and waterfall is not bad, I would say. It only depends on what kind of situation you are in. But for the sake of comparison, if we compare it with waterfall, usually you work in isolation with your customer perspective. But in agile, it's a continuous interaction with the customer, and in a continuous interaction you are expected to empathize with their needs, their thought process, why certain things are required in a certain fashion in a certain time frame. So it's a great benefit where business starts thinking like IT and IT starts thinking like business. That's a great achievement for me personally from agile as a process. Obviously faster go to market, automation, and probably doing things quicker are obvious benefits people associate with Agile. But I would put up empathy and great team spirit as the key achievements an Agile team can offer to itself.
Okay. And do you have any lessons learned or challenges that your teams have overcome which you want to share with us?
Yeah, surely many of them, I think. It would be dishonest to say that we didn't have any challenges or we had no problems. I think fundamentally, when anybody switches to Agile, there are challenges right from the operational team to the leadership. I think Agile talks a lot about servant leadership. And first of all, it tries to move away the reporting hierarchy from the picture, and then the master slave or reporting manager and reportee relationship from the days of working. I think on the ground, when you work in an Agile project in an Agile manner, everybody is equal in first place, and a leader is supposed to facilitate and not control the team's ways of working. So the bigger challenge for us to instill this mindset in managers as well as the team members, because when managers get into steering and facilitation mode, it's the team members who need to suddenly become more mature, take control in their hands, make decisions of what's right, what's wrong, what can be done, what is not priority, how best it can be done, and how you keep your customer satisfied. So there is a large responsibility coming onto the team suddenly without cover of their managers. One another lesson we learned is there are certain roles in Agile, and people should understand the difference between steer versus manage or control. So, for example, product owner and scrum masters, they are steering roles and they are not necessarily managing people. The typical challenge you have is team thinks that scrum master is appointed to manage them and they look up to him or her for suggestions and instruction, which is not that role supposed to do. On other side, a product owner or scrum master should not think that they are superior to the team. Instead, they are part of the team and they are only facilitating and steering the course of the team for their delivery. The third and last big one, which we learned as a lesson, is there are lots of ceremonies in Agile, which is right from grooming, planning, retrospective, daily scrum meetings, and so on and so forth. And many a times people give a lot of importance to the ceremonies rather than the objective of those ceremonies and what you are trying to achieve from those ceremonies. And it takes a hell lot of time to explain to people the benefits of doing it right. And for example, I will give is retrospectives, which is supposed to look at what happened in the past, what went well, and what can be improved. Usually, it remains to a chit chat for 30 minutes, and people forget the actions. And it's really difficult to bring people back to actions and saying a retrospective is effective only if you continue acting on what went well and continue to act on what needs to be improved. So I think these three broader lessons or challenges we faced, and it took a certain while to get everybody along on the basic changes that Agile offers.
Right, thanks for sharing that. Really interesting to hear. So, do you have any thoughts on how product owners and teams should work together to help Agile be as successful as it can be?
Okay, so now when we talk about product owners, typically people also differentiate between a business product owner and a technical product owner at times. But if we elevate this to a product owner as a role, first of all, product owners are there to steer the product roadmap, and they should appreciate and understand the inputs and the challenges being shared by the IT teams. Because usually what happens is product owner thinks that it's his or her right to direct IT team and say, this is what I want and you should be doing within this timeline. And sometimes being submissive, IT teams end up delivering a bad product quality. I think product owners should be opening up to the suggestions, the challenges team shares. On other side, IT teams should also understand and empathize with product owners on their business needs and urgencies, and very clearly explain and make him or her understand why certain things can't be done or why certain things will take certain time. And one another thing I would like to add is product owner should also give and leave certain capacity and time for the technical team to bring in technical improvements in the product. Many a times this relationship is only limited to business requirement, and over the period your product gets really bulky and ineffective and inefficient, and there the product starts falling down and product owner starts blaming technical team. So the best lesson learned would be to give certain time and capacity for IT team to deliver some technical improvements.
Right, and functioning more like a partnership between the product owner,
Absolutely.
I guess, each team bringing different information. Right.
Yeah, so not as you and us, but it's more of we together. Yeah.
So coming on to how do we work out how successful Agile initiatives are? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's a tricky question because I think many times people associate that we moved to Agile and then we were effective, and there are very less KPIs or metrics people adopt. From my learning, we understood that Agile itself will have lots of qualitative KPIs, but I think in case somebody wants to track it in terms of quantitative KPIs, I would also like the team to think about when you try to be faster to go to the market, have we identified right opportunities for automation? Because that's one area where probably quantitative KPIs or measures can be implemented in terms of how much automation have you done in your testing process, deployment process, pipeline creation. Another way of looking at pre and post agile, how many deployments you used to do versus how many deployments do you do today. There are different methods in terms of the effectiveness of agile process itself, where you can look at how much did you commit at the start of the sprint versus how much could you deliver, to just see how good estimation was. And on the other side, there is also something called emergency ratio to give the effectiveness of product owner, because many a times agile is misunderstood as chaotic and everyday changing requirements, but that's not what agile is. It's only time boxing of requirements and good prioritization. So emergency ratio can help us to realize how well product owner has really prioritized and understood and defined the requirements. So these are some of the metrics or measures we track. One lesson I have learned is preferably do not give any KPIs to agile team, because KPIs are targets. Instead, my personal suggestion is team should track metrics and they should compare their current performance against the previous and find out the trend and areas where they need to improve. That's my personal suggestion and experience also.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So last question I have then is on where do you see the future of Agile in the consumer and integration space?
So I would try to segregate the two a little. I think in consumer space, it's more about what your product or application is giving to the end consumers as a feature. There, the dynamics are a bit different, where there is a lot of emphasis on front end integration with the back end and the overall customer experience. With integration space, you are always sitting in between, sandwich between different teams requirements, whether it is front end or back end interfaces. So if I try to segregate this broadly into two areas, with consumer space, agile will be more about multiple iterative development, and most importantly, empathizing not just with the product owner, but with the end customer needs. Whereas integration is an interesting piece because you have multitude of conflicting and prioritizing requirements. So in that case, I would say how quick we are in order to prioritize the requirements, do the impact analysis, and do maximum automation. That will decide the success of agile in integration space. To summarize that, if you see the future of agile, probably consumer space can still work based on the traditional agile, which is Scrum or Kanban. But for integration phase, because it is associated with nearly every component of the organization, I would say safe agile is the future for integration, because you can work with the enterprise mindset and all the components in the enterprise. As you sit in the middle, as an integration layer. That would be my take on the future of Agile.
Right. Okay. Thank you. It's been really interesting to hear all your stories and your experiences, your lessons learned, and the other insights you've shared with us.
It's an interesting space, and I think people should come out of the window of theory and try to be pragmatic. It's an interesting place and space to be. And before we end, I think I would like to once again thank you and Sandhata team for inviting me and talk about the topic of interest of mine. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Shekhar. Really,
nice
it's been
meeting.
Great. Yeah. So listeners, I hope this has given you some ideas about how you can make improvements in your own teams based on what Shekhar has shared. Tune in again for a different topic in our next episode of Sandhata On Air, a regular podcast. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.